The Portland Mall, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that because that was an interesting story in terms of how we made the operations work. Operating in a mixed environment the way we do is not something that was clearly an easy thing to do. We have had plans to do so since the late 80s, early 90s, but never quite figured out exactly how that was going to work. How do you mix bus and light rail in the same operating environment in a way that they can safely and comfortably serve passengers and not get in each other's way? And we were doing in the planning stages before we had it all figured out, talking to operators and rail supervisors and others. And I heard this literally a number of times. I better retire before 2009. I don't want to see that. Well, why? Why is that such a big deal? Well, before we opened the light rail, we had 2 lanes of buses operating. The curb lane was for picking up passengers. The middle lane was for operating through. And how do you add light rail to that without tripping over each other and do it in a way that's efficient and effective? We used to have 2 bus stops per block. They would wait. The through bus would have to yield to the curb line bus to be able to get back out. If we simply just slapped down tracks, we'd have a number of problems. There'd be this third bus hanging out there in the rail right of way. There'd be multiple conflict points in the block, buses trying to get back into the railway. Buses, especially in this position that I've labeled A here, that second bus in the first stop has its rear end sticking out into the dynamic envelope if there's a bus in the second stop. And unfortunately, we were leaving some, especially sight-challenged riders behind in terms of that B bus pulling out, not recognizing that there was somebody up front. We spent, and this was a large part of what I did in 2004, 2005, trying to figure out how that operation was going to work. We had 13 options. I'm not going to talk through any of these, but just to give you an idea that we had some very well-researched, almost flawed options in terms of figuring out how it was going to operate. Would the rail be on the left side? Would the rail be in the middle? Would the rail be on the right side? How do we stop the buses? Can we stop buses on the rail? Can we have buses have to wait for the rail to the next to pull through? 13 thoroughly researched options gone through in excruciating detail inside our agency, and we chose none of them. We chose what we ended up calling Just Right, which was a modified right side alternative that curves, as you'll see if you're riding or if you happen to notice walking along 5th and 6th Avenues, it curves the tracks to the block where the light rail station is, and then curves them back away. And all transit operations are on the right side for passengers. All through operations are in the middle lane, regardless of what the vehicle is. And we're able to do that by dropping a lane when you come into the rail station and adding a lane when you leave. So real quick here, how does it work? This is a schematic. Max at a station with a bus next to it and autos in the third lane right there. We had to continue to keep that auto lane open. That was part of the understanding with everybody, including the businesses, about how this street should work. The max operator starts getting the signal ahead at Q out there, moves forward, checks out of the intersection, the other vehicles get the green light and go forward, following through almost immediately behind, which is something that some of our operations folks were worried about but eventually became comfortable with. All based around making the signals work with how everybody was used to thinking about them, the rail and the bus operators, in a way that didn't make it complicated, we had these grandiose schemes of these amazing systems that would figure out if the train was likely to come in the next 2 minutes and have little flashing warnings at every bus berth location so that the bus operator would know not to pull out. They'd have to look at this flashing warning and look at their passengers and look in the street and look in the mirror and see 3 blocks behind where their train was coming. None of that worked. we were able to put it in a place where they could just simply pay attention to the signals and operate. We had this great model that we worked over again and again and again, and it's hard to see, but it's worth describing. This is just a paper printout, CAD printout of the mall on foam board. What you see here is one of the signals operations of the city of Portland took the whole thing, scale model, and added operating traffic signals. This thing actually turns green, amber, red. And he's chasing white lights that moved at about the speed of a light rail, and we had little folded paper buses. So that I could go to our operators, I could go to our road supervisors, I could go to our safety experts, and the folks who aren't used to dealing with fancy VISIN or other modeling packages and understand exactly what was going to happen. A year's worth of, okay, what happens if the bus does this? What happens if the operator does this? What happens if the configuration looks like this? What happens if a car comes from outside and gets on the rail? And we talked all of it through and managed to get to a solution. And there was no substitute for having a simple little model to be able to explain it. And I get to the point where, after I had explained the model and talked it through, people stopped talking about retirement dates quite so much. So I have a great video that is probably still on the website that shows what it's supposed to look like. And I have some video that I showed at a conference up in Vancouver. But we have the one-to-one scale out there. Feel free to go out and look at it. We did field tests, we marked things off, we had operators out there. One of the funny little details was the bus lane inside the rail on the curb is 13 feet wide, not 12 feet wide. Standard lane around here is 12 feet. We made it 13 because we had done all these tests in our yard. And this is one of my colleagues' hands measuring the safe distance. This bus is pretending to be a light rail, this is pretending to be a bus, and trying it out. And you can see, less than 1 Mendoza hand, more than 1 Mendoza hand. And it turned out it was a really good thing, because I was walking down the mall after we were in operation, and there's somebody in a wheelchair here. The bus realized it too late, pulled over, had its rear end sticking out, but the train's able to get by because of that 13 feet. They also had some interesting design challenges. It's running through a historic district, running through the heart of downtown. Very important place to be, a very important place to pay attention to. Lots of interesting details in terms of the design, putting span wires attached to the same wires with the signals and the signage to try to simplify everything. And this is a close-up. This is what was the Meyer Crank building, now where the Macy's is. This was the old detachment for the streetcar from 50 years ago, back before they got rid of it. We went back and retrofitted the engineering on it, and now some of our span wires for the new Max line are connected in the same locations as those original ones were. And thankfully, the historic officers were pleased with that, and we were able to do that. A whole range of great facilities on the mall. One of the things I'd encourage you to do if you're out at night is these shelters, these great new shelters, light up. And in the dark, they're a great addition to the streetscape. This is part of a canned presentation. It's always important to have a new construction. We shut down during Rose Festival in the summer, which is our most important summer festival, and we shut down during the Thanksgiving to Christmas shopping season. And we have to do that for our Max construction as well. But working around that is worth it because it gets the support of all of the business owners. We didn't lose businesses on the mall because of the construction, and we're proud of having been able to do that, despite the fact that we were having to dig everything up. And so we didn't have to retire. At least I did. Some people still did. This is a shot down at PSU. A friend of mine sent me this. It's in regular operation. The yellow line is on the right side serving the station. The bus is coming through on the through transit lane, and the streetcar is about to turn off towards South Waterfront.